I decided to follow through with all my aftercare plans, and I just started doing my thing and doing what was expected of me. And my family started to be more involved in my life, and they were proud of me, and they would send me cards, and there was an outreach of all these people, family members and friends from my previous life that were proud of me, and it made me feel proud of myself. And I had a new life, I had a new son, and a new chance to change who I was. Recovery has given me my entire world back, and I wouldn't change anything if I had to do it over again. My name is Megan Fairchild, and this past August I celebrated 5 years in recovery. My journey into recovery has been unique in the way that growing up I had a really great childhood. I came from a very loving, normal home with 2 parents and a sister. Growing up, I was an avid athlete and excelled in athletics my entire life. That was my main outlet. And when I got into high school, I started to experiment with alcohol and continued to play sports, and was offered a scholarship, dual scholarship for basketball and softball in college. But I didn't make it that far because alcohol had become a bigger part of my life. Through my 20s, I continued to use alcohol as a way to have fun, as a way to cope with life. I started to experience some domestic violence in a long-term relationship that I was in, and that led me to use more substances, such as marijuana, methamphetamine, and cocaine. And that continued on until I was in my 30s, mid-30s. I was in another really abusive relationship, and I had been estranged from my family because of the controlling situation I was in, and eventually found myself homeless and strung out on bath salt and addicted to opiates. I hadn't spoken with my family in a few years, I think, and I was literally like walking the streets and looking for a place to sleep every night. And it was difficult. And then I found out my father had 2 incurable diseases, and we weren't sure how much time he had to live. So I felt this urge to take a look at myself and try to change. I owed that to my dad. He gave me an amazing childhood. He was just an incredible human being for me, and he left a really great impression upon me. So I really needed to find a way to make some changes, but unfortunately I wasn't able to make those changes on my own. And eventually I caught some charges and was arrested multiple times. I would be put on probation. I would go to jail. I would get out of jail. I would continue to use. Probation would catch up to me, and I'd continued that cycle for a couple of years, and in and out of incarceration for probably 6 times. By this time I was probably 36 or 37. The last time I was incarcerated, my dad had become very ill, lost all the functions of like his hands and his legs, and he had a hard time talking. And I really hadn't spent that much time with him in the last probably 8 to 10 years of his life. I felt a lot of overwhelming guilt and shame because of that. And I was like in a constant state of like depression and desperation. And then I was picked up again and put in jail for the last time. This last time I was incarcerated for about, I think it was like 7 months, and I found out I was pregnant, which was a huge eye-opener for me. My family, they didn't think that I was capable of bringing a child into the world and giving them the life that they deserved because I was barely able to take care of myself. And I honestly couldn't disagree with them. But there's something inside of me that saw a challenge and wanted to prove them wrong, and also to prove to my dad that I could be a better person and be the person that he raised me to be. So when I got out of jail that time, I stayed sober for almost 2 years, I think, a year and a half. And then I had my son, a healthy pregnancy and a healthy child, and I had a new relationship, and we were both sober, and things were going great. And then I slipped up. My son was 5 months old, and I was on parole, and I found myself in a situation with Child Protective Services. When Child Protective Services comes knocking on your door, there's nothing more scary than that besides maybe a near-death experience. So it got real. I had to get myself to an inpatient treatment facility as soon as possible before parole would catch me. Otherwise, I was going to go to state prison and probably lose my son. And that was one of my biggest fears. And not only losing my son, but being in prison when my father passed away. So those are some big motivators for me to not do the same things. So I was just kind of scrambling at this point. I never had the courage to change or to stop using or to stop running with the same people, or even to just find new coping skills with life and not be an angry, miserable person. But having all of these things weighing on me, I just kind of tried to do the next right thing. So I found myself in a rehab. It was the first time I'd ever been to rehab. And I hated every second of it. I was very, I didn't really like it. The first week was really rough. I didn't want to be there. Trying to convince myself of all the reasons I needed to leave. But ultimately I stayed, and I'm thankful that I did. The second week I was there, I decided to participate in the groups. And I remember my first group sitting in the back of the room, and this woman, her name was Sandy, started to share some of her story. And this was a very pivotal moment for me because it gave me a new perspective on what I could do and what I was capable of. And Sandy went on to talk about her experiences with domestic violence and her addiction, and just her struggles as a person. And I sat there and I looked at her, and I saw a part of me in her, but I could see this new healthy person who was functioning, and everyone looked up to her, and she seemed like she had her shit together. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's what recovery is. I never knew that before. I never understood what it meant to be sober. I never understood how to become sober and what I needed to do and how to maintain it and how to achieve this thing called recovery. And that was the beginning for me. So upon getting out of rehab, I decided to follow through with all my aftercare plans, and I just started doing my thing and doing what was expected of me. And my family started to be more involved in my life, and they were proud of me, and they would send me cards, and there was an outreach of all these people, family members and friends from my previous life that were proud of me, and it made me feel proud of myself. And I had a new life, I had a new son, and a new chance to change who I was. Recovery has given me my entire world back, and I wouldn't change anything if I had to do it over again.